You're not unhappy because you failed. You're unhappy because you've become disconnected. From what? Not from success. Not from others. Not even from love. But from your own soul. You may not know it. You may wake each morning, check your calendar, fulfill your roles, parent, worker, friend, and think, this is what life is. But deep down, there's a quiet ache, a tiredness that sleep doesn't fix, a heaviness that joy can't quite touch, a sense that you are surviving, not living. And this, Carl Jung would say, is the most common illness of the modern person. A soul that has forgotten how to speak. People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul. You try harder. You plan more. You chase the next milestone. You stay busy, because silence might show you something you're not ready to see. But still, the unease returns. It returns in the middle of the night when no one's watching. It returns during success when you suddenly feel strangely empty. It returns when you're alone and the distractions fade. And that's when it whispers, this isn't who you really are. We live in a culture obsessed with happiness, but it's a performance. Smiles on screens. Gratitude journals we don't believe in. Positive thinking used like a plaster over a deep emotional wound. But Jung never defined happiness the way the modern world does. To him, happiness wasn't about feeling good. It was about being whole. The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. And here is the paradox. You will never be truly happy as long as you are not truly yourself. And most of you? We've spent decades building a life around who we thought we were supposed to be. We put on the mask. We built the persona. We learned to behave, succeed, please, perform, and the world rewarded us for it. But Jung warned, if you live only as your persona, you will eventually collapse under its weight, because there is a cost to ignoring your soul. There is a cost to betraying yourself. That cost is your joy, your vitality, your sense of meaning, your ALIVENESS and the world will not stop you. It will applaud your mask. It will praise your accomplishments, your resilience, your productivity. It will call you strong, even as your inner world begins to fall apart. But there is a moment, sometimes quiet, sometimes dramatic, when you realize something is missing, and no amount of achievement will fill that void. That moment is sacred. It's what Jung called a call from the self, a signal that your deeper nature, your true soul, is asking to return. This call may come as depression, or anxiety, or fatigue, or a deep existential question like, is this all there is? Most people try to silence that voice. They distract themselves, medicate it, spiritualize it with bypassing, rationalize it with more work. But Jung invites you to do something different. He invites you to turn toward it, because the truth is, you're not broken. You're not lost. You're not too late. You're just disconnected from the one relationship that truly matters, your inner life. And the longer you ignore that relationship, the further you drift from joy. Not surface-level happiness, but the deep, grounded kind that comes when your life and your soul are finally aligned. That kind of happiness doesn't look like excitement. It looks like peace, clarity, a steady sense of rightness in your bones, a way of walking through the world that says, I am no longer pretending. That's what the soul wants. Not more, not better, not even success. It wants wholeness, truth, integration. that it wants to be lived. And that is where we begin. Modern life tells you that happiness is a goal, something to chase, to earn, to achieve through effort, performance, and the right attitude. You're told that if you just work hard enough, love deeply enough, manifest clearly enough, you'll get there. And for a while, you believe it. You follow the path. You set the goals. You smile through the grind. You accumulate the markers of success. But then one day, you have what you wanted, and it still doesn't feel like enough. You're standing in the house you once prayed for, lying beside the person you thought would complete you, wearing the title that once seemed so far away. And yet, something aches, something feels. Carl Jung understood this ache. He saw it in people from every walk of life, the powerful, the famous, the ordinary. He called it the crisis of persona. The persona is the mask you wear to function in society. It's the version of you that knows how to play the role, smile at the right time, say what people want to hear. It is, in many ways, necessary. But you warned, if you identify only with the persona, you will become hollow. Because beneath the performance, there is still a human being. Complex, wounded, yearning, unfinished. In the last analysis, the essential thing is the life of the individual. This alone makes history in the long run. Jung the persona helps you survive, but it doesn't help you feel alive. That it earns you admiration, but not intimacy. It wins approval, but not connection. You become a stranger to yourself, a curator of appearances, a master of external success who secretly drowns in inner silence. This is why so many people who have it all still feel numb, or lost, or angry for reasons they can't name, because the persona was never meant to be your identity. It was only ever meant to be a tool, a bridge between your inner world and the outer one. But when you become the mask, you forget the face beneath it. And that face, that real self, is where your soul lives. The modern world sells you a version of happiness that keeps you on a treadmill, always needing more, always fixing something, always comparing. But Jung's version of happiness was not about feeling good all the time. It was about becoming whole. He believed the soul does not crave pleasure. It craves authenticity. It doesn't want you to be perfect. It wants you to be real. To laugh when it's honest, to cry when it's true, to rage when it must, to rest when it's time. But when you're trapped inside the persona, you feel pressure to smile when you want to scream, to say, "I'm fine," when you're falling apart, to keep going, even when your body is begging you to stop. And each time you betray that truth, a small piece of joy leaves your system. Not because you're doing something wrong, but because you're living away from yourself. It's like wearing clothes that don't fit. No matter how beautiful they are, they slowly suffocate you. Jung taught that every person has an inner calling, a unique silent thread that runs through their existence. When you follow it, even if it's hard, you come alive. When you ignore it, even if life looks good on the outside, you die a little each day. That's why more never feels like enough, because the hunger isn't material. It's spiritual. You're not longing for more things. You're longing to remember who you are beneath the pressure to be someone else. And the first sign of that longing is usually discomfort, the ache, the question, the fatigue, the quiet suspicion that this discomfort isn't a problem. It's the invitation, Dot. It's the soul knocking. Not to ruin your life, but to finally reclaim it. The soul is not interested in the things the ego chases, Dot. It doesn't care how many people admire you. It's unmoved by your resume, your titles, your image. It doesn't respond to performance, applause, or ambition. The soul wants only one thing: wholeness, not happiness, not success, not ease. Wholeness. Carl Jung said it simply: the most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. But that is precisely what the soul is asking for. It doesn't want you to become someone new. It wants you to become fully yourself. The joy you're seeking will not come from becoming better. It will come from becoming real. And to be real, you must welcome not only the parts of yourself that shine, but also the parts you've buried, the parts that ache, the parts you've been told to hide. Your fear, your anger, your shame, your need, your longing, your wildness, your vulnerability. All of it belongs. All of it is part of you, and the soul will not rest until it is allowed to speak through the whole of you, not just the pieces that feel acceptable. Wholeness is not achieved by cutting off a portion of one's being, but by integration of the contraries. Jung, we live in a world that tells us to fix, polish, improve, to chase positivity, to crush darkness, to be more, always more. But Jung's path is the opposite. He invites us inward, toward the chaos, the contradiction, the forgotten, because healing is not about removing the broken pieces. It's about seeing that they were never broken, only unmet. Think of a stained glass window. Each piece is jagged, imperfect, incomplete on its own. But when placed together, they form something holy. That is the soul's desire, not perfection. Integration. And that's why self-help often leaves us unsatisfied, because it keeps feeding the illusion that you must be more than what you are. The soul doesn't want you to climb higher. It wants you to root deeper. To sit with your wounds until you no longer fear them. To hold your contradictions until they no longer tear you apart. You are not meant to be one thing. You are meant to be many. The confident and the uncertain. The joyful and the grieving. The strong and the soft. And the soul, that vast, mysterious self, can only speak when all of you is present. But we spend so much of our lives editing ourselves, toning down, toughening up, performing what is acceptable, and exiling what is not, until one day we forget what it means to feel real. And that's when the emptiness creeps in. Not because something is missing, but because too much of you has been denied. The soul begins to go silent when it is not allowed to be whole. It doesn't punish you. It waits patiently until you are ready to return. To come back to yourself, not by force, but by grace. And when you do, when you let the light touch the darkest rooms inside, something beautiful happens. You stop trying to become. You start to remember. You remember the child inside you who still wants to be held. A dream you silenced for the sake of being realistic. The tenderness you hid so you wouldn't be hurt again. These are not obstacles to your wholeness. They are your wholeness. And when you begin to say yes to them, when you stop editing your soul and begin listening instead, that's when the healing begins. Not the kind that makes everything perfect, but the kind that makes everything true. Shadow is not your enemy. It is your mirror. It holds the parts of you that were too wild, too loud, too soft, too strange. too sensitive for the world to welcome Dot, so you buried them. You tucked them away in the corners of your psyche, not because you were weak, but because you were wise. You knew, even as a child, that some parts of you were not safe to express, so you adapted, you complied. You became what others needed you to be, and for a time, it worked. You were loved, or at least accepted. You kept the peace. You fit in. But as Jung taught, what is repressed does not disappear. It waits, it gathers power in the dark, and eventually, it returns not to hurt you, but to complete you. One does. Not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. Carl Jung, the shadow, is not darkness in the moral sense. It's simply whatever you've exiled from your conscious identity. And here's the painful truth. Most of what we long for, vitality, freedom, creative fire, emotional intimacy, lives inside the very parts of us we were taught to reject. Your anger? It contains your boundaries. Your sadness? It contains your capacity to feel deeply. Your fear? It holds your longing for safety and truth. The shadow is not here to shame you. It is here to restore you. But most of us spend our lives running from it. We numb it, suppress it, spiritualize it, project it onto others, lovers, enemies, children, friends. And the more we run, the more fragmented we become, until the soul, quiet but relentless, brings us back to the place we've avoided. Place where our joy has been trapped. The place where we left pieces of ourselves behind. Jung believed that true healing begins when we stop asking, "How do I get rid of this part of me?" and start asking, "Why did I abandon it in the first place?" That shift in question changes everything. It moves you from rejection to relationship. From suppression to integration. And in that space, you begin to realize something quietly beautiful. You were never broken. You were just incomplete. The shadow is not a problem to fix. It is a doorway, a teacher, a voice that says, "Come find what you left behind." Imagine your inner world as a vast house. Some rooms are warm and well lit, your confidence, your generosity, your success. But other rooms are locked. Rooms filled with sadness, rage, unmet needs, shame, and yet, the energy of your soul lives in those rooms too. The shadow is the part of you that remembers who you were before the world told you who to be. And that's why ignoring it costs you your joy. Because until you retrieve those parts, you're only living half a life. You're smiling from the mouth out. You're performing happiness, but inside, something feels like it's still asleep. That's not failure. That's the signal. The shadow is knocking. It doesn't want to destroy you. It wants to bring you back to life. And here's the secret Jung revealed. Your greatest light is always hidden in the place you're most afraid to look. So the question isn't, "How do I feel better?" The question is, am I willing to feel what I've denied? Because once you let the shadow speak, once you hold the trembling, unwanted parts of yourself without judgment, the healing begins. Not the kind of healing that makes you feel good instantly, but the kind that makes you real. The kind that lets joy rise, not because everything is fixed, but because you're no longer running from who you are. There is no shortcut to becoming whole. There is no checklist, no life hack, no 10-step program to enlightenment. Carl Jung never promised happiness as the world defines it. He promised something more radical and more real. Individuation. Individuation is the journey of becoming. who you truly are, not who your parents hoped you'd be, not who your culture rewarded, not who you had to become to survive, but who you've always been beneath the masks, beneath the pleasing, beneath the pain. Individuation means becoming an individual, and insofar as individuality embraces our innermost, last, and incomparable uniqueness, it also implies becoming one's own self. Jung is the great inner work of life, a returning, a remembering, and it begins not in success, but often in crisis. That moment when the old ways no longer work, when the identity you built starts to crack, when the things you used to want no longer move you, when you realize you've climbed a mountain, but it's not the one your soul needed to climb. That's the call of Individuation. It's not a failure. It's a threshold. An invitation from your deeper self to leave the outer program and turn inward. To walk into the forest of your own soul without a map, only a longing. This journey is not easy, because it asks you to face the truths you've avoided, to meet the shadow, to reclaim the inner child, to sit with your sadness, to question your beliefs. It may mean leaving behind relationships that no longer reflect who you are. It may mean letting go of success that cost you your authenticity. It may mean learning to live in the quiet while the rest of the world moves louder and faster. But what you gain is yourself. And from that self, whole, rooted, honest, everything begins to change. Not instantly, not always comfortably, but deeply. You begin to make decisions not from fear, but from alignment. You begin to speak with your real voice, not the one designed to protect you. You stop trying to be good. You start trying to be true. That's the core of Jung's work. Happiness is not a surface feeling. It is the quiet joy of living in harmony with your own soul. The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. Individuation is not about reaching perfection. It is about embracing totality. It's about saying yes to all that you are. The bright, the broken, the fierce, the afraid. It's about integrating the opposites within you. Not choosing light over dark, but learning how both dance in the same sky. You don't need to destroy your ego. You need to relate to it. You don't need to silence your shadow. You need to listen to it. In individuation, there is no enemy within. There is only forgotten life waiting to be brought home. And this journey is deeply personal. No two souls walk the same path. No blueprint fits everyone. Because your wholeness is uniquely yours. You must discover it by walking it, by following the symbols in your dreams, by paying attention to the patterns in your pain, by staying curious about what still hurts. That's how you find the thread that leads you not away from life, but deeper into it. This is why the second half of life often brings a deeper kind of fulfillment than the first. In youth, we build. We expand, we conquer, but in the second half, we descend. We reflect, we refine, we root. And as Jung taught, this descent is not a fall. It is a return. To self, to soul, to silence, to truth. And in that return, you begin to realize something profound. You don't have to chase happiness. You just have to stop abandoning yourself. Because when you live close to your essence, when you integrate your contradictions, when you honor your rhythms and your truth, peace arises, not because life is perfect, but because you are no longer split inside. You are whole. At last, you've been told that the goal is to be happy. That if you just find the right job, the right partner, the right mindset, you'll finally feel whole, complete, at peace. But Carl Jung offered a different truth, one that's quieter, deeper, and more real. The soul doesn't want you to be happy. It wants you to be whole. Happiness, as we're sold it, is fleeting. It depends on circumstance. It rises and falls with mood, weather, money, people. But wholeness doesn't leave you. It anchors you. It gives you something more powerful than pleasure. It gives you meaning, because wholeness is not the absence of suffering. It's the integration of everything that made you who you are. Your wounds, your wisdom, your rage and tenderness, your doubts and your wonder, your shadow and your light, all of it included, all of it accepted, all of it you, and from that place of wholeness, a new kind of happiness is born. Not the loud kind, not the kind that demands attention, but the kind that sits quietly in your chest and whispers, I am home. That's what the soul has been asking for all along. Not for you to become someone better, but for you to return to who you already are. Beneath the masks, beneath the striving, beneath the fear. This isn't the kind of message that fits in a quote on a coffee mug. It doesn't sell as well as think positive or manifest more. But it's the truth. And deep down, you know it, because part of you is tired. Not just physically soul tired. Tired of pretending. Tired of running. Tired of chasing. Something you can't name. That part of you doesn't need more. It needs honesty. It needs stillness. It needs the courage to stop, to feel, to look inward, not for judgment, but for understanding God. And when you do, you'll realize something beautiful. You were never too broken to be happy. You were simply too far from yourself. Happiness is not something to pursue. It is something that arrives when you're no longer resisting your own soul. So if you've spent your life chasing what the world promised would fulfill you and still feel empty, it's not your fault. You weren't taught how to listen inward. You weren't taught how to trust the soul's slow wisdom, but you can learn. Right now, at any age, the moment you begin to turn toward what's real in you, your grief, your joy, your contradictions, that's when something shifts. That's when joy comes not from doing more, but from being more fully you. That's the kind of joy that doesn't depend on tomorrow. It's the kind that exists quietly in the way you breathe, in the way you walk, in the way you begin to love your life again, even in its imperfection. If this message spoke to something inside you, something you've been carrying, quietly, something you've tried to name for years, then this is your place. This is your journey. Click like if this video gave you space to breathe again. Subscribe to follow the rest of this series on Jung's map to a fulfilled life. Because in the next video, we'll go deeper into the soul of youth and explore what Jung believed a young man or woman truly needs to live authentically and freely from the start. It's not about becoming perfect. It's about becoming whole. That journey, yours, is just beginning. I'll see you in the next one.